wondering, where are we? That was my first thought, like, what is this place? Stupid questions, like those who tell me about your country and all those things. Accent was already changing. When I was speaking to her, I was rambling because it felt like I needed to speak in a particular way to show that I belong here. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. My name is Opendo Barasa, in case you're new here, and welcome to a new segment on the channel called the FreeMySkin Podcast, where I'll be dropping a video every Friday. Don't worry, the Tuesday uploads are still going up. They will go up, but I just felt like I needed a separate space to share my experience as a Black person, as an African, racism, the challenges that I face at work, and something a little bit more personal for you guys to get to know me better. And possibly you would learn a thing or two from my experiences, or just be prepared for what is expected when you move to Japan, either as an English teacher or just moving to Japan in general. Or maybe you're just curious as to whether, how is life in Japan for foreigners, specifically people of African descent. That being said, let's start it light. I feel like I want to make this into like a smooth journey. My first impressions of the country, the day I landed, how everything felt like, the culture shocks. But let's start from the beginning. I moved here in March of 2024. And if you guys remember, in the beginning of the year in January, Japan faced a very huge earthquake. And I remember feeling like, God, will this jeopardize my opportunity to move to Japan? But it ended up not, and 2 months later, I arrived. First thing I noticed, I came in spring, that is March, April season. It was extremely cold. If you live in a tropical country, a hot country, or a country that doesn't experience all these seasons like winter, autumn, spring, summer, it is very, very, very cold. The company had organized for the hotel bus to pick us up from the airport. When I got to the company, when I got to the hotel, it was a little bit late at night, and I just received my room keys and what else? SIM card and a phone, a company phone. The company phone, you have to request for it if you want it. Usually they give you the option of just getting a SIM card, or if you want a phone accompanied with it, and I decided to go with it too. The room was really cute, went straight into bed because the next day we had training. Now, what woke me up in the morning was a loud alarm, guys. It was loud. And it felt like, you know how in the Bible they describe the end times, or the day that Jesus comes back? I thought the world was coming to an end. By the time I realized what was happening, I started crying, and I was like, God, why did you choose today? Like, you gave me a job that I really wanted, I was dreaming about. And then on the day that I arrived, you decide to come back. That was really funny. I was literally in tears because the way that alarm sounded, it wasn't like my usual, morning alarm. It was different and very loud, the kind that is designed to wake you up. Even if you are dead, you'd wake up. So when I checked my phone, because my phone was buzzing, at that point I hadn't realized there was an earthquake. Actually, I did. And that's why I thought the world was coming to an end. I felt like the heavens were opening, and you know how they say Jesus will come riding a horse, and angels will be singing, and a trumpet will be heard across the world. That's what I thought it was. But later, I just realized it's an earthquake. A few minutes later, got up, got dressed, went downstairs. So when I got to the conference room, I heard this noise of just people speaking, and I remember wondering, we just arrived yesterday. Why are people so loud? They don't even know each other. I just brushed it off. My first observation when I got there, I could already hear or notice the Americans, or American people, because of their accent. They were very chatty in small groups, talking, getting to know each other. And it just felt natural to them. It felt like they knew each other for years and years and years, yet they just met. Second observation, all the Black people were either seated together, or you'd notice two Black people together. From the group, I could easily pinpoint the Africans. I could say, she looks African, he looks African. he doesn't look African, or there are people I just couldn't place what part of the world they came from, but I could tell the African Americans from Caribbeans and Africans, because the African Americans obviously had an American accent, so that's how I could identify them. For the Caribbeans, I don't think the accent was distinct enough for me to pick it up, but once I got to talk to them, I could tell, oh, they're Jamaican, or they're from this part of the world. But the Africans, to be specific, they were very isolated. They isolated themselves. Either there were two African people sitting together, scrolling on their phones, or just individuals, or in a group, maybe people from Zimbabwe, Kenya, South Africa. In fact, I was the only Kenyan, but there were a few people from Zimbabwe and a few people from South Africa, others from Nigeria, Ghana, etc. The one thing that I took note of, though, was how I could notice through body language, I'm a very observant person, that there was an inferiority complex among African people, including myself. And I'm a very, very extremely confident person. And I never knew this is something that I would feel. Obviously, there's the nerves that you get when you move to a new country, getting a new job. It's like, am I really fit for this position? Will I fill the position as it's expected of me? But because of how the motherland and the continent has been portrayed in the world, subconsciously, and I say it, let me tread carefully, subconsciously, we feel like when we go into places where people have that view of us, we kind of make ourselves small or not want to be noticed. And that's what I realized, that the Africans really did not interact with other people. In fact, when we got into the conference room, many of us sat at the back, and I will use taking a back seat both figuratively and literally. Literally, 90% of the Africans sat at the back. And generally, during the whole 1 week training session, I saw how we took the back seat in terms of not wanting to be noticed, not saying anything, not interacting much. And I could tell that it's because many of us were just looking around wondering, where are we? That was my first thought, like, what is this place? Because in that room, we were like 140 something people, and majority of them were white people, specifically from America, or maybe the Americans were the loudest. And the whole training session had a lot of Q&As, pair activities, and during the Q&As, the Americans were always like, hands up, asking questions. In fact, they would ask even the most, how do I put this respectfully, but for the lack of a better word, the most stupid questions, like those questions that you wouldn't expect anyone to raise their hands to ask. But this is not to say that they're stupid. It's just that for me, it was speaking confidence, because if I raise up my hand and I ask a question, at least to me, it has to be meaningful. It has to be something that has not been mentioned, but they will give, their questions would come from, I wish I could give a good example, but they're just questions you would not expect anyone to ask, really. But it just spoke of the confidence and their presence in rooms. Like, you couldn't walk anywhere, and I mean anywhere, even in Japan, and fail to notice an American. They're so confident, very loud, take up space, and I think it's a good thing. During that training, I remember how easy it was for them to make friends. I remember this girl came to me and said, "Oh, hi, how are you? I like your sweater." I was like, "Thank you." And she was like, "Oh, where are you from? Tell me about your country," and all these things. It took me aback because I'm not used to this sort of interactions. They kind of freak me out, or it just becomes awkward for me because I don't know you. And I'm also the kind of person that I won't speak to you unless you speak to me. I like to observe first, and then after my observation, a day or two max, I can decide who to interact with. And this was such an awkward thing for me because subconsciously, and I didn't realize this, my accent was already changing. When I was speaking to her, I was rambling because it felt like I needed to speak in a particular way to show that I belong here, or I'm good at English, even though I'm African. I don't know where that came from, to be honest. And it's something that a lot of Africans experience, especially when I told her I'm from Kenya. She was like, oh, Kenya. Tell me something about Kenya. I really don't know anything about Kenya. It was such a weird position to be in. Really weird. Extremely weird. So it almost felt like I'm carrying this burden of representing my country and having to explain. And I had to talk about things like, oh, Obama's father is from Kenya. Lupita Nyong'o is Kenyan. The runners, all the things about Kenya, savannah, tea, flowers. Yo, guys, when the world has been conditioned to see you a particular way, you never realize that these things affect you until you are put in a position where you actually start to feel them. And the inferiority complex was so bad that there are times where I will just zone out during the training session and ask myself, do I fit in here? I wonder how I'm perceived by everyone in this room. And it just reminded me, before I moved to Japan, I was reading some Reddit comments of native speakers, in quotes, white people talking about, oh, Japan teaching salaries are very low. And it's because they just hire anyone, people who are willing to take a low salary like Filipinos and Africans. It was like in a very degrading way. And it was just ringing in my head, is this what they think of us? Is this what they think of us? But at the same time, I'm just like, even though the salaries are low, nobody told you, nobody put a gun to your head and said, apply or else you die. You came here knowing the salaries are very low. And it's not about, Africans or some Asians accepting low salaries. The Japanese economy in general, the salaries are very low. Even though the economy is good, the salaries cannot be compared to America, the UK, Canada, Australia. It's just one of those things. And this is very common in Asian countries. When you look at South Korea, it's the same thing. China, it's the same thing. For teachers, obviously, in other Asian countries, it could be better, like South Korea, China, just slightly better than Japan. But in general, when you have a general outlook of things in Asia, the salaries are quite low compared to European or some countries in North America. So yeah, my first impressions were definitely a lot of inferiority complex. And if you're moving to Japan as an African or a Black person or somebody, let me just stick to African because I don't know how people from other countries feel when they are in a place where nobody looks like them. But given the African history across all 54 countries, almost every African I have met has experienced inferiority complex, and it doesn't end after training. It goes on and on and on when you go into class and you see textbooks with Kenyan kids specifically. Imagine I'm Kenyan, talking about how they walk miles through the savannah and their parents can't do anything but just pray for them that they go to school and come back home safe. Like literally in their textbooks. And you have to explain to these kids that this is not normal. But Africa or the continent has been portrayed in that manner. Therefore, it means in every place, in every room that you walk in, you have to change the story, or you have to defend yourself, or you have to sit through ridiculous questions and comments, which could get irritating if you're a sensitive person. And being a Pan-African myself, I try to change the narrative. Even when I teach, when we compare cultures and everything, I try to portray Kenya and the continent in a positive light. I just don't show them the bad things that they see, which technically is literally this percentage of the continent. And I kept telling people that many people who are interested to listen to what I have to say. The same way you people watch BBC, watch Al Jazeera and see how these communities in certain parts of Africa are struggling, and you wonder, oh my God, this must be terrible. 90% of Africans watch the same documentaries and we wonder, like, how do people live like this? Because 90% of us don't live like that. We live very fulfilling lives, and our idea of wealth and our way of life just looks different. It doesn't mean that we are poor. It doesn't mean that we lack. it's just different. We don't own, majority of us don't own washing machines in our homes or villages, not because we can't afford them, but it's just not our culture, or it's not our way of life. Of course, they're becoming popular nowadays in cities and everything, but what are you comparing it to? You're talking about a poor person in America who says, "Oh, I was so poor, I was sleeping in my car." You have a car, miss, sir. You have a car. You know, when you talk about poverty in America and you talk about poverty in Africa, it looks different, you know. So for you, if you come to Kenya and you see somebody not driving, it doesn't mean they're poor. They just don't own a car. Yeah. Let's end it there since this is the first episode. You guys should give me your opinions. What do you think? Do you think inferiority is something you're going to experience? I guarantee you will, but just give me your opinions. What do you think? Do you feel like how the world has portrayed Africa has made you shrink in some spaces, especially international spaces? Do you feel the need to prove yourself and do things 10 times more, put more effort to be noticed or to feel like you belong? I would really love to hear from you. See you again next Friday on the Free My Skin podcast. Bye.